Hello everyone and welcome to my behavioral models presentation. So the purpose of this presentation is I have performed some research on two different behavioral models, and I'm going to see how both of these models coincide with a problem area that I have chosen to study. So things that I'll be identifying are the chosen population, which will contain the problem with this chosen population, this population's characteristics and characteristics of both behavioral models, and again, how there is correlation between the population and the behavioral models. So, the population that I have chosen was the elderly people in the state of Colorado, specifically meaning the people 65 plus years of age. So, a couple demographics of this age group. In 2016, 13.5% of Colorado's population are senior citizens. Colorado has 5.7 million people, which means there are 769,500 senior citizens. The Colorado State Demography Office states that by 2030 there will be approximately 1.27 million 65 plus adults. As far as race and ethnicity goes, 83.5% are white, 10.8% are Hispanic, 2.4% are Asian, and 2.7% are African American. And I decided to add a little chart on the right-hand side, just talking about that as well. So, some social determinants of health and other factors that coincide with senior citizens. Many of them are immunocompromised. Many of them have health issues like diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular problems, Alzheimer's, those kinds of things. And therefore, a lot of them are also on more medications. Many of them are not able to take care of themselves, especially patients that have like Alzheimer's, for example. And so, that being the case, many of them are also not able to transport themselves to appointments, especially if they have, a lot of them are in wheelchairs, stuff like that. And so, again, also they have dexterity issues a lot of times. So that can definitely factor into their oral health specifically. So the first model that I decided to research is the health belief model. And so just a definition of it, the health belief model is a theoretical model that can be used to guide health promotion and disease preventative programs. It is used to explain and predict individual changes in health behaviors. It is one of the most widely used models for understanding health behaviors. The model defines the key factors that influence health behaviors as an individual's perceived threat to sickness or disease, perceived susceptibility, belief of consequence, which is perceived severity, potential positive benefits of action, perceived benefits, and perceived barriers to action, exposure to factors that prompt action, which is cues to action, and confidence and ability to succeed, which is self-efficacy. And this comes from an article called The Health Belief Model. The 5 key action-related components that determine the ability of the health belief model to identify key decision-making points that influence health behaviors are: 1. Gathering information by conducting a health needs assessment and other efforts to determine who is at risk and the populations that should be targeted. And this needs assessment was done in my last assignment. 2. Conveying the consequences of the health issues associated with risk behaviors in a clear and unambiguous fashion to understand perceived severity. 3. Communicating to the target population the steps that are involved in taking the recommended action and highlighting the benefits to action. 4. Providing assistance in identifying and reducing barriers to action. And 5. Demonstrating actions through skill development activities and providing support that enhances self-efficacy and the likelihood of successful behavior changes. So basically, I summarized all that in my own words. I said the health belief model is a way for us to observe a population of people or individual persons and determine what problem they have, what is causing that problem, why their beliefs are associated with their problem, and ways we can solve or help their issues and convince them to contribute to it. So this is a little diagram that I found and decided to put in here. I think it really plays out everything that has to do with the health belief model. So the demographic variables and the psychological characteristics all contribute to different kinds of susceptibility, motivators, benefits, barriers, that kind of thing. And I like how they categorized in the middle there. And all of those, therefore, will change what the person's actions will be based on what is happening. So it's like a 3-step process is what I look at it as. So, comparing the health belief model with the elderly of Colorado Springs, there's two different things that really stood out in my mind. Two ways that this affects the people. So the first one, many of the elderly do not have access to dental care, and there are clinics and programs that we do have that are available to them. However, many are not even aware of these options, and therefore these are perceived barriers and are large. These barriers are large, and therefore their motivation is low, resulting in no action. Then overall, their oral health care is hindered. So, if we were able to communicate with the population of elderly and guide them to oral health care assistance, this would alter the events. So basically, how is the behavioral health model used in this scenario? I take it back to a couple slides ago when I had mentioned a couple of the 5 different key components. So the two that I see presented in this scenario are communicating to the target population the steps that are involved in taking the recommended action and highlighting the benefits to action, and providing assistance in identifying and reducing barriers to action. If we can find a way to tell these elderly about these programs and grants and whatnot that we have to assist them, then maybe they'll be more likely to reach out and try to be a part of these programs. But right now they just have these big barriers, and so if we can tell them what barriers there are and help them find a way around it, that would really help them out a lot. And so the second one, which I think is even more prominent really, is a couple different examples of this. Many of the elderly have many health issues that are correlated to periodontal disease, such as cardiovascular issues, diabetes, and then many of them are unaware that not taking care of their teeth could be causing more issues in the body, and therefore are not as motivated to keep up with their oral health. Many elderly may also have dexterity issues, as I mentioned before, and may not be effectively cleaning their teeth every day, but are unaware that they're not cleaning their teeth well every day. So basically, their perceived susceptibility and perceived severity is askew, and therefore their oral health is hindered. They don't think that what they're doing is wrong. They don't think that it's necessary for them to go in more frequently for cleanings, or they know that they need something else to help clean their teeth better. So basically, if we're able to communicate to the elderly the effects of periodontal disease and tooth decay, and also assist them in recommending tools such as an electric toothbrush to more effectively clean their teeth, there would probably be an improvement of their oral health as a whole. So in this instance, I see that all 5 of the components are being used. I mean, we're helping them identify barriers, we're showing them ways that we can improve, we're also gathering information, we're telling them the consequences of not changing their lifestyle. So if you don't continue to improve your oral health care, you might have some of these issues like cardiovascular diseases, or in the other way around, these issues could cause more problems with your mouth and whatnot. So I think all 5 of the components are used, and a good way to help the elderly in this instance. So moving on to the second theory that I decided to study is I decided on the social cognitive theory. So I really like this one. The social cognitive theory describes the influence of individual experiences, the actions of others, and environmental factors on individual health behaviors. The social cognitive theory provides opportunities for social support through instilling expectations, self-efficacy, and using observational learning and other reinforcements to achieve behavior change. Key components of the social cognitive theory related to individual behavior change include self-efficacy, behavioral capability, expectations, expectancies, self-control, observational learning, and reinforcements. And you can read through some of the definitions there. So again, I just decided to go ahead and summarize that in my own words. The social cognitive theory is a way that we can analyze a population and determine how their social surroundings, including family, work, social media, culture, etc., influence their lives. In this case, obviously, we'll be focusing on oral health. So this is the picture that I decided to use for this theory, and I think it works really well. And this is also why I really like this theory so much, because it's so simple. Basically, I like this triangular shape where the environmental factors influence the cognitive factors, influence the behavioral factors, and influence the environmental factors. So just constantly going round and round. Basically, what you were raised to believe, the things that you surround yourself with, the people that you surround yourself with, these can all affect how you behave and the things that you do. And so basically it determines the human behavior, as it says right there in the middle. So how does this theory relate to the elderly of Colorado? Many elderly are strongly influenced from what their parents taught them as a kid. I know all of us dental hygienists experience this quite frequently with the elderly. A good example is many elderly are scrub brushers because that was the norm a long time ago. So many of them have severe recession and have to have gingival grafts, and they don't even know that this is causing so much damage in their mouth, and it's just how they were raised to believe. So, and then another good example is back in the day, access to dental care was not as common as it is nowadays, and they grew up getting used to the idea that it was not entirely necessary for them to visit the dentist regularly. So again, family, social norms influencing them. And then one of my favorite examples is one of the most prominent examples for the elderly is that anesthetic techniques were not as developed when they were younger, and it has given them a bad taste for the dentist, and therefore is a barrier for them when thinking about going to the dentist. I can't even tell you how many stories of elderly I've had sit in my chair, and they come in and I'll take x-rays on them or whatever, and they'll say, man, it is not nearly as bad as it was a long time ago. And then they'll go into stories about, oh man, when I got a tooth pulled, I didn't have any anesthetic and it was terrible for me and all this stuff. And I think that really influences a lot of people. If I got a tooth pulled without anesthetic, I think I would be pretty nervous to go back to the dentist too. So it acts as a barrier. These norms and influences of others change their expectations and attitudes, and therefore their practices or the way they live their life was altered. So some of the key concepts from the social cognitive theory that I mentioned in previous slide back here that I think are used are expectations, expectancies, and self-control. It's really interesting to see how this culture that they were raised in affects how they are nowadays. So, in conclusion, when looking at my chosen population, I decided to research more about the social cognitive theory and the health belief model because I feel they are most beneficial when studying the elderly and understanding their reasons and health behaviors. The elderly are extremely opinionated based on their younger day beliefs, so that is why I chose the social cognitive theory. And they also have many mental and even physical barriers which prevent them from having a good oral health, and that is why I chose the health belief model. The elderly are a population that need oral health care the most, and I think really digging deep and discovering these barriers and attitudes is the first step in accomplishing a change for them. And these are my references, and then these are my picture references. So thank you so much for watching.